Welcome to GOPIO Diaspora Museum Initiative. As you may know, GOPIO was founded in 1989, and it's a worldwide diaspora organization with 100 chapters in 35 countries. This year, GOPIO has initiated a monthly Zoom webinar on different topics of diaspora's interest on second Saturday of every month. We are able to bring together worldwide participants in this monthly dialogue. The idea is to unite the people of Indian origin all over the world, and we are starting to do that more successfully. Out of this dialogue, more GOPIO initiatives are forthcoming, and our emphasis is on inviting the relatively younger generation to become more active in GOPIO. For example, last month, we had a meeting about investing in India. And we had venture capitalists from Switzerland, from Singapore, 2 from UK, 2 from India, and 2 from USA. All these venture capitalists are investing with young people in India in all kinds of startups. And so these are the types of initiatives that we would like to highlight. And we would like to have a lot of these younger generation members become more and more active in GOPIO, because GOPIO's future is the younger generation. Thank you so much and welcome everybody. I will now ask Thomas Abraham to take over as the moderator for today's session.
Thank you, Prakash. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, namaskar, distinguished guests and panelists, GOPIO International and chapter officials, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you and bring greetings from GOPIO International. For those who are not aware of GOPIO, its full name is Global Organization of People of Indian Origin, which was formed at 1989 at the first Global Convention of NRIs and PIOs. In fact, after the convention, we worked with the government of India on some of these issues. And in fact, we were the one who originally suggested to have the OCI card, like a PIO card and overseas Indian citizen card. We worked with the government on this Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. And after 14 years of our first convention, Government of India decided that they will do the Pravasi Divas. We worked with the commission, and that Pravasi Divas under Vajpayee administration was the great initiative to connect with the overseas Indians. Now, during the Pravasi Divas, there always used to be some exhibits from some countries on the history of diaspora in that country. Even the last one, which was held in Bhubaneswar, I was there, and there were a few countries, their exhibit was also presented there. But there has not been a museum of the Indian diaspora. In 2010, at the initiative of GOPIO, there was a memorial was built on the Hooghly River where the indentured laborers were boarding the boat to various countries. So that memorial was inaugurated, and but still there is no museum. So we have this GOPIO Diaspora group where this idea was originally suggested by Dr. Lina Armodam and then Dr. Vinod Daniel. He is a curator from Australia. He took up that issue, and we appointed him as a committee chair, which is 4 other people, Professor Gupta from UK, and then we have Dr. Bhuvan Lal, and then Dr. Lina Armodam and Mrs. Isha Vyas. So they took up a few months, and we had several meetings with them. And finally, we decided to have this launch pad to promote this campaign for a museum. So today we are here to hear the report from Dr. Vinod Daniel, Mr. Vinod Daniel, and a few words about Vinod Daniel. He's from Australia. He has been a curator for several museums, not only in Australia, in India, but in about 60 countries. So the program will be that we'll have an official presentation. I suggested it's going to take about 15 minutes, a slide presentation. And after that, we want to see what the museum should contain. So there we will have historians as well as people who are knowledgeable about the diaspora in different regions of the world, from Caribbeans to North America to Europe to Far East, Malaysia and Africa. So we are speakers about 5 minutes each to all of them, speaking on the Indian diaspora history and about Indian diaspora. So we start this program now. I invite Mr. Vinod Daniel. He is the chairman of Oz Heritage. He has worked on museum and projects in 60 countries and was a board member of International Council of Museum. He provided an excellent free service for our diaspora. Vinod, go ahead. Take over.
Thank you very much. I'll try to share my slide before I start.
Can you share it now? Okay.
I do.
Let Sid share it first.
For some reason, yeah. Okay, can you?
Yeah, yes, everything is fine. Go ahead.
So basically, I don't need to really stress on why this museum. I think Dr. Thomas Abraham has really briefed quite well on that. So I'll just rush through some of the slides. So it basically, the diaspora is historical, it's growing, and the main vision of this museum would be to celebrate the stories, cultures, and legacies of the Indian diaspora, to honor the struggles, contributions, and homeland connection, and to create a global cultural bridge for future generations. So there are several objectives, as you can read out here, and a little bit on the description, which I think would come more as I present the concept more in detail. So basically, the idea is to have some permanent galleries, which would have a bit of personal stories, as well as global stories, and also some rotating exhibitions. And the concept would be in terms of, as you can see in the picture, it's a little bit, as I explain you what the 4 galleries are, this would make more sense. The first one would be historical, the second one is current, the third one is celebration, and the fourth one is all about culture. So the first gallery would focus strongly on the early people from India who went as indentured labor, early traders, etc., etc. And that's been a very significant group that's gone across the world. I had an opportunity to travel extensively in Pacific and Southeast Asia and a little bit in the Caribbean. And I visited some of these institutions that display a very small portion, but there is still not anything significant in terms of what's displayed. So that would be the first gallery. The second gallery would be a little more contemporary. It'll probably focus on the Indians who went in there, settled, especially I think many of you here from the US and UK and other parts. I mean, I live in Australia, so I meet with a lot of them. So it would probably, focus on these people, their journeys and their settlement. The third gallery would focus on the great achievements that the Indian diaspora has done. It'll be a celebratory gallery. I mean, every day we read about great achievements the Indian diaspora has done, keeps doing. And so this would be the third permanent gallery. And the fourth one is, I think culture is such an integral part of India. And the diaspora carried that. they celebrate that extensively, whether you go to Fiji or Malaysia or Singapore or any other part of the world, you still see that, quite prominently. And so that would be the fourth gallery. So this would be the 4 permanent galleries. Sorry, I'm rushing through this because of the shortage of time. But later on, I'll be happy to share a synopsis of this to anyone who's interested. Some of the signature displays that probably can happen, are highlighted in this PowerPoint. I'm going through each one of them in the next few PowerPoints, so I won't spend too much time on this. The first one is a migration theater. So this would be a film in some kind of a theater with a particular dome that actually shows that whole migration, the journey, and how people went. And this would be a very significant part of Gallery 1. So this is not just Gallery 1, but this would be one of the key displays. So every gallery we try and do at least 1 or 2 significant displays. So this would be one of them in Gallery 1. The second one would be where there would be a lot of interesting stories. There could be letters, there could be other artifacts, there'd be many touching things. So this particular gallery would have them displayed. People can actually touch on that and then get the whole story of what has happened, as part of somebody's journey through that particular artifact. So there is a little bit of a personal connection that can come. So this also would be a significant display in both Gallery 1 and Gallery 2 combined. The third is, it's all about the global Indian footprint. I mean, as everyone's aware, India is doing so phenomenally well globally. And this one would have a little bit in terms of people who are high achievers, who have been around, and this would celebrate the success and show, what has been achieved. So this would be one of the displays in Gallery 3. There'll be a lot of other displays also, which should be part of that gallery. And the fourth one is all about culture. I think, as all of you would recognize the importance of culture, whether it's dance or food or music or both tangible and intangible aspect. And so the Gallery 4 would have this as one of the key things. And we have many options on how to split that up so that it's shown in Gallery 4. There would also, as you exit, we also thought it would be good to have some kind of an archive wall where individuals can actually contribute the story. It would be there. And maybe as you go, you touch a screen and that whole story would come out. So this again gets a lot of the diaspora. So it's not just, some people, whose life is highlighted. There's an opportunity for, many, many more people who want to contribute, for their stories to be highlighted. Now, in addition to this, I think any museum would need a very strong educational component. So there would be an online component which could be crowd curated, because there are many stories from around the world that can come in. Many things can be documented, which can be uploaded. There also could be, aspects there which would be beneficial for the youth, especially the second generation and others who are there, who probably don't know much about India, how you connect them. And also there'll be a lot of people who might be interested in research elements. So they also might be able to go here and do research and gather more information. So these are the permanent galleries. In addition to that, you'll also have temporary galleries where things can change. So you might have country showcases, you might have showcases based on certain thematic aspects. So, that's totally up to us. But this one will change on a regular basis, maybe every 6 weeks to 2 months or whatever it is. And it's a possibility. For example, these are some examples of case study, but it's just examples. So, I mean, there's many more examples that are possible. Typically, if you want to get it right, this one is based on our experience on how much area you might need, because you'll need about 17,000 square feet or about 1,700 square meters for your permanent galleries. Then you'll have a lobby area, you'll have back office, retail, you'll have space for rotating exhibitions, archives, education zone, etc., etc. So this, in a nutshell, gives you a little bit in terms of what you need. Now, why something like this in Delhi? I guess it's probably the center point for everyone who comes into India or goes out of India. And it probably would be the ideal location. But again, nothing is set in stone. So it's just a concept that is being put together. Now, there are several pathways to take this forward. We had many discussions. So either the government can give some building on a lease and we can develop it, or it can be a greenfield construction via foundation, or it can be a historic building that's given that needs to be retrofitted, adaptive reused, and then we build something there. Or it could be a hybrid where we have a public-private partnership approach. The governance and management, I think there's been many discussions. So it can be a totally independent diaspora-led board with an advisory from cultural and academic institutions and collaborations with, again, many other global museums that do have diaspora component. And typically, to get something done, once the building is there, from concept to execution might take about 18 months. Just to conclude, it'll be the first of a kind museum celebrating India's diaspora, a space of pride, education, and global connection, and it shows a soft power and cultural diplomacy on a world stage. And now to just end it, this is not just a museum, it's a mirror for a people, a bridge to a homeland, a legacy for generations to come. So thank you very much.
Thomas, you're muted. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Vinod. I really appreciate your condensing it in proper time. You did extremely well giving this the whole concept of the museum and how we can establish it. So we will start with some other speakers, and I know this is the 170, 180-year-old history. You put it in 12 minutes. Now we are going to hear in 5 minutes each from our speakers from different regions of the world. After that, we'll have some felicitation messages as well from our distinguished guests. So we start with anybody who has any question, please put it in the chat room, any comments, because we are going to take this up after all the presentations, after all the speakers have spoken. So that is the Q&A at the end of the whole presentation. Now I invite Professor Prabhu Guptara. He is a visiting fellow at the Judd Business School, Cambridge University, and chairman of SALT Research Media Group. Professor Guptara, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas Abraham. Very kind of you to have invited me to speak on the Indian diaspora in Europe. And I think it might be useful to give a little bit of a historical perspective before we come to what the situation is today, because I'm afraid most people, including our distinguished people here on the webinar at the moment, may not be fully aware of the history. So let me start with the UK, because we have the largest number of people of Indian origin here. Current estimates are about 3 million, and not as much as the United States, which is now 5 million, I believe. But that is a recent development in the United States. Historically, of course, UK had the largest diaspora. More interestingly, we should be aware that the first Indians came to the UK in the 17th and 18th centuries, mainly as what were called lashkars in those days. These were people who both operated the boats and guided the ships, actually, that came from India to the UK and back again. Because the British, though they came to India, did not have the expertise, the seafaring expertise, to actually come to India. So it was Arab seafarers and Portuguese seafarers and Indian seafarers who were key to the ships being able to travel between UK and India. So they were basically people who came, lived here for a very short time, usually between the sailings, and then went back. And there are very interesting records of these people who lived in the UK for these short periods of time usually in hostels that were maintained by the church or people connected by the church who were hospitable to these people, made them feel at home and all that before they were sent back to India. Very interesting records of that. But the first named person whose name we know was in the 18th century. He was a Muslim cleric as well as an ambassador and a writer. He was known as a munshi, and his record of his time in India, in the UK and in France is actually recorded in Persian and was translated from the Persian into English in 1821 and then was later on, of course, republished. But the second person who came and settled in the UK was a man called Sheikh Deen Muhammad, also Muslim by background, though he became a Christian later on in life. A very interesting man, the first known person to have written a book in English ever, Sheikh Deen Muhammad. And he was, in addition, the first person to establish an Indian restaurant in the UK, the first Indian person to have started a medical facility in the UK, and so on. Very interesting man. So I could talk more about him, but I won't at the moment. So as I've said, about 3 million in the UK at the moment, long history, very well established, obviously Prime Minister and so on, who we've had of Indian origin, loads of members in the House of Lords, loads of members in the lower house of Parliament, very well established business leaders such as Hindujas, Prakashji and so on, who are here. So very well established community in every field. That's UK. The next largest group is in the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, we have something like 250,000 people. So, but most of them are not directly from India. Most of them have come via Suriname. And I would say 2/3 of the population of people of Indian origin in the Netherlands is of Surinamese origin. But in the whole of Europe, generally speaking, people came and settled there from about the 1950s onwards. Germany is a little bit of an exception to that, because in Germany, people used to come for Sanskrit studies between the two world wars. It is not generally known that the place for the best and most advanced Sanskrit studies in the world between the period of the First and Second World Wars was actually Germany. So if you wanted to study Sanskrit to the highest level, you came to Germany to study Sanskrit, which is very strange, but that's what it was. And earlier than that, again in the 18th century, the very first Indian to have come to Europe to actually study there before returning to India was a Tamil gentleman who studied theology in a place called Halle. Most people don't know where Halle is today, but it was a very important center. And by the way, Thomas, he'll be of interest to you because he studied theology and went back to be a priest and became one of the first founders of the indigenous Indian church in India. So very fascinating characters, mostly Muslims and Christians, which is fascinating in the early period. Now, of course, mostly Hindus. So that's an interesting historical story. I think I'll stop there. There are, of course, populations of Indians in Austria, in Spain, in Switzerland, and so on, all over Europe. But these are very much smaller populations. The big populations are, of course, in the UK, in the Netherlands, and in Germany. And then everything else is smaller after that. And the general situation of Indians in all over Europe, I would say, is very few racist problems, very well settled, generally speaking, in all fields of endeavor. And I think that's worth reflecting, of course, in the museum, because the history in the United States and Canada and so on is very different, slave origins and so on, or slave-like origins and so on. So indentured labor and all that. The European history is quite different and is worth reflecting. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gupta. You mentioned about early migration of Indians in UK, but continental Europe also had some migration. During the Independence Day movement, there was Madame Kama mobilizing Indian independence movement in France, and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose in Germany.
Yes.
Any brief insight into this? Because these are important aspects to be considered for the museum.
Indeed. Madame Kama was a very famous lady. She came, of course, from a very distinguished family. We all of us know about the Kama Oriental Research Institute and so on, the philanthropic Parsi family. She was from that family. The family supported her when she first came to France and settled there, and actually supported her throughout her time in Paris. But she lived a very simple life. She did not live the life of which she could have done of luxury and so on the basis of the family wealth. And she devoted herself wholly to the independence struggle. So she's generally known as the mother of the Indian independence. The father, of course, is Gandhiji, so to speak, but the mother was Madame Kama. And she was called Madame Kama, of course, because she lived in Paris. She and Savarkar, by the way, the founder of Hindutva, were very close colleagues in the early days, in the time when Savarkar was still a secularist, because Madame Kama was, of course, not a Hindu, she was a Parsi. And her first flag of independence, which she unfurled in Stuttgart at the International Socialist Congress, the very first time an Indian flag had been unfolded at any international occasion, was a very fascinating flag with 8 lotuses for the 8 Indian provinces, because at that time there were 8 provinces in British India. And she had, so that was the top panel. And then the bottom panel was the symbol of a moon and the symbol of a sun, representing, of course, Islam and Hindu. So the phase when Savarkar was still a secularist was very much connected with Madame Kama's work. Now, her work was banned, she was followed, she was spied upon, she was not allowed to travel to various places. She published to journals that were, to newspapers, journals that were banned, of course, in India, and were surreptitiously circulated both in Britain and in India, and were very important in terms of rousing and mobilizing Indians. So very, very key figure in France. And then Bose, of course, is very well known to all of us. His work in mobilizing support from Germany, and later on, of course, in Singapore, his struggles there are very well known. He succeeded in mobilizing not just the general average Indian, which is what Madame Kama did, but succeeded in rousing people who were in prisoner of war camps in Germany, as well as others, to join him, to actually join the armed struggle from Singapore. And of course, it's a very sad story that we don't know how he died, and the latest books have suggested some reasons why we don't know why he died. And I think it would be very good for the current government and any future governments in India to actually try and unlock the story of why he died and where he died and so on. But anyway, these are, there will be lots of open questions which should also be in the museum, but that's certainly one of them.
Yeah, well, this is actually a brainstorming session too, what should be there. So I'm glad that in such a short time you condensed all the important aspects of Europe. Now we go to Professor Dr. Denis Jayasuriya from Malaysia. He is the head of the Secretariat of the All Party Parliamentary Group of Malaysia. Malaysia on Sustainable Development Goals and President Society for the Promotion of SDG since 2020. Honorary Professor at Institute of Ethnic Studies, National University of Malaysia. Denison, go ahead. Go ahead.
Mute.
Can you hear us, Denison? Vatsala, is he muted?
No, he's not muted. Yeah, if he can remove
You're able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much for this invitation and this opportunity to participate. I think I have had good opportunities with Dr. Thomas during the diaspora discussions and many of the early GOPIO. I think Dr. Vinod Daniel's presentation is an excellent one, and I'm sure we can work out many of the details that he has suggested, many of which I am supportive and could assist from the Malaysian story. I think so. I think in terms of drawing data and material from the Malaysian experience can be a contributing element to this museum and as a major contribution. I would slightly have an earlier period to the colonial period in the Malaysian context and the Southeast Asian experience, because there is a pre-colonial period of engagement of India or Indian civilization with Southeast Asia. For example, the Bujang Valley, the Chola period, where both Buddhism and Hinduism was quite prominent in the period. And this goes back to a period much before the colonial period. But definitely the colonial period is the major section in which large sections of Indians, largely plantation workers, but also a business community, educated group in universities and others who came in to the period. But I think there is a lot of interest at the third level, which will be the Second World War and the independence struggle. And that would have a lot of contribution because of the role of Subhash Chandra Bose and as Netaji and his impact in both Malaya and Singapore at the period. And there is a lot of references to it. I know Dr. Vinod has a lot of documentation or highlight on the successful stories of the West, but I think we must also capture the struggles and contributions of Tamil, in this case, workers, plantation workers, during this period. This is well documented. And I think the challenges and struggles should also be part of history, not just success stories or major achievements like Sundar Pichai, but ordinary people who sacrificed their lives to build the plantation economy, which supported British economy, and subsequently with independence, it actually was nationalized and actually is the backbone of the Bumiputra economy in Malaysia as well. So I think we need to capture ordinary people's stories as well. I think there was a large section of people who suffered in the journey to free India in the Burmese journey and so forth. So while we can capture the successes, at the same time, we need to, because there were distinguished Malaysians in rubber research, in medical research and so forth. And the final period is the modern period. And I think at every point we can also look at, since independence, India's foreign policy as it relates to the diaspora, as well as to the various countries. And in the modern period with new migrations of workers and communities in the professional sector, as in the US, which is slightly different in Malaysia, would be different in the Singapore context, where citizenship is provided even now, but in the Malaysian context, that is more restricted. So I think it will be a fascinating experience, Dr. Thomas. I think there was no presentation in Dr. Vinod's presentation of who's going to finance this, where the manpower, the research is going to come from. And I'm sure the diaspora would support the initiative and not only individuals, but also community organizations and academicians might join in the process. And a number of us are on this discussion. And Dr. Thomas, we will be happy to assist you in any way. I wanted to show that one of the publications on more contemporary one was published by a few of us in the Malaysian context as well. So there's a lot of data and material of our experience that we can bring in. Thank you for this opportunity, and I hope we would be included in the conversation and we could be able to facilitate both historians in our context and the business community if they are to co-fund it and support this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jayasuriya. You have been a scholar, you have been writing books, and all this, it has helped a great deal to our diaspora community. Mr. Vinod Daniel will come back again at the end of the presentation to speak some of the issues which other speakers are bringing up. But at this point, I have one question for you. You mentioned about Singapore. And can you give in about 2 minutes about our important aspects of migration to other South Asian countries?
Yes, I think one could look at that. I think Malaysia, Singapore, there are smaller sections in Thailand, Philippines, but I think the historical period would be quite fascinating from an archaeological and other forms, the impact or the influence of Buddhism across the whole of Southeast Asia, the presence of both Hindu temples and Buddhist temples that can date back to the Chola period or even earlier. So I think there's a lot of historical, and even in recent times, the Indonesian government has acknowledged the close relationship and adoption and the impact of Indian civilization. One is the diaspora that we need to look at, but we also need to look at Indian engagement or the influence of Indian thought, Sanskrit, religion, culture beyond the diaspora community. And I think that could be seen in Cambodia, it would be seen in Thailand, and especially in Indonesia with Bali, where there is a very strong Hindu community still in Bali, which is an impact of the early engagements of Indian civilization. So I think we need to adapt, and I think Vinod does highlight that in his fourth dimension of the galleries. But I think a civilizational approach might be important, and in that context as well, the Indian Muslim traders who have played. So the Indian Muslim community has a very strong cultural identity and affinity to culture, language, their heritage. They are linked back to either Kerala or Tamil Nadu. A civilizational approach might also be useful because its impact, like the sultans in Malaysia, has like Raja Cholan, there's the road and so forth. It's Malaysianized, but it's actually coming from the use of Sanskrit words in also architecture and civilization. So I think there could be, and there are a number of researchers from Singapore who have documented more academic work. So there's the base already of a lot of this material and the researchers are still around from the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies and other academics. We can draw them, but we'll have to see what should specifically be worked out or contributing to what Dr. Vinod is building, and you know, and add on to that whole dimension, and the financing of this as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very important suggestion. I think we may have to highlight more. And I think as we develop the program, this could be one of the part of the museum, especially the historic aspects of Indians migrating several centuries ago. Anyway, let me go now to Dr. Bhuvan Lal. He lives in India, but also make trips to USA quite often. He is a writer, author, the biographer of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Lala Hardayal, and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. He is also the author of Namaste Keynes, Delhi in the Era of Revolutionaries, and India on the World Stage. Bhuvan, it's all to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for inviting me. First of all, I must acknowledge the foresight of GOPIO to set up this. It's a visionary move. It's a historic mission, and I'm both honored and privileged to be part of it. Indians in America is the subject that has been given to me. The recorded evidence of when Indians came to America is now being termed as somewhere around 1770, 1780. The reports that Indians participated in the American Civil War, American Revolution, and they were trading with America long before the time that the world recognizes. Today, there are about 8 million plus Indians in North America, Canada, and USA combined. The first official recording of Indians arriving in large numbers in America is in Vancouver, in British Columbia. And after that, the most important Indian who walked on the American soil was Swami Vivekananda. On September 11th, 1893, he gave the historic speech in Chicago. And from that moment onwards, India became prominent in the American media, American press. Swami Vivekananda made 3 trips to America, went to California, went to the East Coast. Subsequently, and that's why November 1st today is important. Subsequently, on November 1st, 1930, the Indian freedom movement actually started in a remote corner in Berkeley, California. On that day, a former Indian professor of Stanford, Hardayal, launched the Gadar newspaper. The echoes of Gadar newspaper, Gadar Gunj, reached all over the diaspora world. South Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, East Africa, most of Europe. And a movement started which eventually became the Gadar Party. All the names that have been mentioned before, Savarkar, Bhikaji Cama, later on Bhagat Singh, of course Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Patel, they were all aware of the Gadar movement, as also Dr. Ambedkar. The Gadar movement evolved thanks to Raj Bihari Bose into the Indian National Army and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Azad Hind Fauj. They are all part of what started on 1st November in 1913 in San Francisco, in Berkeley, in California. They are stories of many unsung heroes in that period, which need to be recorded, which need to be made part of this museum. These are people who excelled in fields which were not well known in India. They sacrificed a lot. And on the basis of that sacrifice, today, being an Indian in America is an asset. From British Columbia to the Wall Street, to the Capitol Hill, to the Silicon Valley, and to Hollywood. They are Indians who have made a name for themselves. Right across North America right now, the 8 million plus Indians who live, they've brought a civilizational asset to the North American civilization. And some of these stories are well known. Some of these people are still unsung. Dilip Singh Sond, Dr. Harbans Khurana. Thousands and thousands of names come to my mind. I would want them to be part of this museum. I also want to urge and use this opportunity for the members of GOPIO and other distinguished guests who have joined to help make this dream come true with their financial resources, their contacts, and their relationships with the government. As we go along, we will realize that 500-600 years from now, when the future generations of the diaspora go back to India, they'll be able to track down where they started from, where their forefathers came from. And that's a great service to the generations yet to be born. Thank you very much, Dr. Abraham, for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bhuvanlal. You covered quite well with United States, but there was some issue in the beginning. We were not even had the voting rights. That's some of the very important aspects for Asian or Asian American, including Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, Indian. We were the first one to take up can you give some insight into that? Also mention about any migration to Mexico?
Just on the voting rights issue, initially Indians were considered lunatics officially in America, United States of America. In 1914 February, Lala Hardayal made a presentation in Washington, D.C., and he convinced them that there was a possibility of letting Indians immigrate into America. And it was very racial at that time. And that eventually snowballed into a discussion and it led to post-Second World War. Before India became independent in July 1946, a gentleman called J.J. Singh, a very prominent Indian who played a huge part in publicizing the Indian freedom movement in North America out of New York. J.J. Singh was the man who convinced North American government to allow immigration of 100 Indians into America. And now, you know, it's 8 million in North America, 5+ million in US, a lot of green cards. At the same time, I'd like to mention here that J.J. Singh's son became the head of Sony Entertainment Television in India and worked for Sony. And his granddaughter became the PR consultant and the PR person for Kamala Harris. So the family has continued working in North America.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bhuvanlal. Now we go to the Caribbean. It is Ms. Shalima Mohammed. She is Cultural and Heritage Consultant and Director and Moderator of the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center's Zoom Weekly Thought Leaders Forum. And the president is also here, Dr. Kumar Mahabir, on the screen. Shalima, go ahead.
Thank you very much for having me. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, very well.
Great. Thank you very much for having me here on this program with wonderful speakers so far. I'd like to share my screen with you.
Go ahead.
And I just want to share that there are psychological implications for this very important project that we are talking about today. One of which has to do with understanding our history and roots, which is crucial for developing a stable and coherent sense of self, something that some of us in the diaspora who have descended from the Gomitias seem to lack sometimes. A clear sense of origin in India allows us to contextualize our present challenges, of which there are many, within a larger historical narrative. And critical parts of this narrative are missing or unknown in some of the diaspora countries. So what happens is that descendants often feel isolated and disconnected from wider human history. And it is for this reason that Sylvia Galari Perez of Belize is suggesting that we absolutely need to have documents. Documents are missing for those in Belize who are actually descendants of Gurmitias who went to Jamaica. They have no idea where their foreparents lived in India. They don't know the names of the ships, and they want to see some original artifacts. Likewise, Fabrice Subdan of Guadeloupe, he says we need to know where we came from. They do not have any passengers lists from all of the voyages from India. They also want to see a list of returnees to India from Guadeloupe. Dr. Arnold Thomas from St. Vincent, he's saying they need to see documents, record of all the ships from 1861 to 1880, and passenger lists are missing for Vincentians. They want to see a report of the returnees to India up to 1885. What did they bring back to India? Nobody knows. Who remigrated to diaspora countries? Nobody knows. And so there's a sense of dissonance for descendants. Very importantly, Dr. Thomas raised the report of immigration agents and protectors of the Indians. And this too was echoed by Professor Moritz Hassan Khan of Suriname. You see, reports of the protectors and artifacts and museums of resistance are very important to us. There were several uprisings in diaspora countries, which are not covered anywhere except in our diaspora countries. And if we are talking about India and this museum being placed in India, then Indians ought to know that there were over 20 documented deaths of Indians, Indian indentured laborers in the Hussein massacre in Trinidad in 1884. Actually, the 30th of October is the anniversary date of that massacre. In Suriname, there were uprisings in 1884 and so on. Who were these people who died? They had family in India. In 1913, the Satyagraha march in South Africa, the Rumveldt massacre in Guyana. Who were these Indians? Some of them would have shared correspondence with India via the Calcutta letters, but those Calcutta letters are not known to Indians, nor are they known to others in the diaspora. And so these are some of the things that ought to be captured in such a museum. And therefore, what we hope will emerge from this particular project is a shared historical narrative and origin. And this can contribute to collective identity and, of course, social cohesion among Indians in the diaspora. I'd like to say that the archive wall that Mr. Daniel talked about ought to really have documentary films by descendants who searched after many, many years and dollars. They found their ancestral villages. They made their journey back to the ancestral villages, found relatives there, and now we can have that documented as well. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Shalima. That was a very wonderful presentation covering all of the Caribbean region. In fact, our GOPIO had our GOPIO convention in Port of Spain in Trinidad 2014 when Prime Minister was Kamala Prasad Bisweshwar. And of course, she's back again as the Prime Minister. We also have Indian origin presidents in Guyana, until recently in Suriname. This was not the case in the 1980s and 1990s when Indian diasporas were targeted in all these countries. In fact, our first convention was organized because of the human rights violation in these countries. Any comments on the historical aspects of these changes which had happened in the last 3 decades? Or I would say after 1990s? Where we came to power in many of these countries. Did you get it?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question, please?
Yeah, the question was that, we were targeted in the 80s, our Indian community, Indian diaspora. But by 1990s, we all came, our people became president and prime ministers of all these countries. I'm talking about Guyana, Trinidad, Suriname. Any comments on why such changes could happen?
Well, why such changes could happen? I think resilience among the Indian population and sharing knowledge and power was important. And therefore, there was a recognition among our populations, especially in the Caribbean, that persons of Indian descent were able to overcome many of their challenges. And with their knowledge, they were able to ascend. And therefore, through honest leadership, we have the return, for example, of Kamala Prasad Bisasa. Now, I know that there are question marks. Every politician is called a corrupt one. But at the same time, we see better conditions under persons of Indian descent who are leading their countries. Hence the reason we have now a number of them in the Caribbean islands in particular, and we would like to see that continue. But has it redounded? Have we benefited in any way? I mean, persons of Indian descent, have we benefited in any way? No, there's no biased leadership among the Indians as far as we can tell. There is simply a recognition that there are persons of Indian descent who came from a Gamitia background who actually have a voice despite the fact that we are in the minority in our countries. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your insight into the whole diaspora history. So we will take note of it, and Vinod is taking note of this, what we should consider in all those countries which you have mentioned. Now we go to the next speaker. He's Mr. Satyendra Tirtham from Mauritius. He is a Mauritian Guyanese historian, writer, lecturer, head of technical unit of and historian at Upper Wasi Gut World Heritage Site in Port Louis. In fact, he's so busy today because tomorrow they have a big program at the Upper Wasi Gut World Heritage where the president, prime minister, vice president, all of them are coming. Satyendra, go ahead. Satyendra, can you come? Satyendra. Vatsala, can you focus on Satyendra Tirtham? Satyendra Tirtham.
Do not see his camera on.
Otherwise, you may want to skip him for the moment and come back to him later.
All right, then we will go to Mr. Omi Singh. He is a member of parliament, was a member of parliament. He is president of KwaZulu Natal International Business Association in Durban. Omi? Go ahead, Omi. You're on.
Thank you very much. Our president, Mr. Prakash Shah, our chairperson, Mr. Thomas Abrahams, distinguished panels of speakers, all protocols observed. Namaste, Vanakkam, Assalamu alaikum. Today we celebrate a very remarkable journey of Indian diaspora in Africa. Over the past century, Indians have migrated to Africa to the following countries: Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. During the colonial past and the era, we have woven ourselves into the fabric of these nations. They played a pivotal role in building infrastructure from the railways to businesses, laying the groundwork for economic growth as they settled in the new homelands. They persevered, they cultural heritage, and values becoming living bridges between India and Africa. Today, the Indian diaspora stands as a testament of resilience and adaptability. They have not only thrived, but also contributed immensely to the cultural, economic, and intellectual landscape of their adopted countries. In a sense, ladies and gentlemen, the Indian diaspora in Africa, in East Africa, is a vibrant, dynamic community, honoring the historic journey and celebrating the present day achievements. They continue to serve as a cultural bridge, fostering identity, memory, and connection between India and the world. It also gives me pride to speak today about a truly remarkable journey of the Indian diaspora in South Africa, where I'm a citizen. It was a journey of courage, endurance, and triumph, a journey that began 165 years ago and continues to shape the character and the destiny of our nation. Our history on this soil began in 1860, when the first Indian arrived in Natal aboard 3 ships, the Truro, Belvedere, and the Mlazi. They came as indentured laborers to work the sugarcane fields, facing hard conditions and many hardships. Yet, through resilience, discipline, and faith, they persevered. They tilled the land, built the communities, and laid the foundations of hard work and integrity upon which later generations have flourished. In the year 1893, a young lawyer named Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi arrived in Durban to represent an Indian merchant. His experience in South Africa profoundly changed him. Here he witnessed injustice and discrimination, but instead of responding with anger, he responded with courage and moral conviction. It was in South Africa that Mohandas Gandhi developed his philosophy of satyagraha, non-violent resistance, a philosophy that later inspired millions across the world and helped India achieve its independence. Indeed, Mohandas Gandhi came to South Africa as a barrister and left as a Mahatma, a great soul, to inspire the world and give India's independence. This is one claim we as South Africans are very proud of. That as South Africans, we can take credit that Mohandas Gandhi came as a barrister and left as a Mahatma and got India's independence. Today, more than a century later, the Indian community in South Africa stands as proud and integral part of the Rainbow Nation. From humble beginnings, our people have excelled in business, education, medicine, politics, law, and the arts and culture. Our temples and mosques and churches enrich the spiritual life of our country. Our music festivals, cuisine add color and warmth to the South African life. As we celebrate 31 years of democracy, we also celebrate how far we have come as a united people. The Indian community has been part of the South African transformation, helping to build the economy, create jobs, uplift communities, and strengthen ties with India and the broader world. We are proud to be both Indian in heritage and South African in identity. Let us honor the sacrifice of these people who arrived in 1860 and the teachings of the Mahatma who arrived in 1893 by continuing to live the values they stood for: peace, humility, perseverance, and unity. And as we look to the future, let us ensure that the next generation carries this legacy forward with pride in our roots, confidence in our democracy, and faith in a better tomorrow in South Africa and in Africa. Dhanyavad. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rami Singh. It was so nice to meet you when we had a meeting in Durban 2017, and you were a member of the parliament, and you took care of us when we had our visit to Durban and Cape Town. Now, I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned about Indian diaspora in the East African countries briefly. But Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania had large migration, I would say more than 1 or 2 centuries. Can you briefly tell about that migration as well as to other countries like Mozambique and few other countries, even Gabon, French country also have migration. Any idea? Any? And I know recent time in the North African countries too. There are, and of course Ethiopia and other Nigeria too. There were a lot of teachers who migrated from India to teach there. Any insight into this?
Yes. To these countries that you just mentioned, there has been a small migration in these countries, and mostly as business people and teachers. Business thrived in the African countries, and in these countries that you mentioned, in particular Mozambique, there's a large Indian community there. I was very surprised while I was driving through not so long ago to come across a beautiful temple in the midst of nowhere. Actually, in the midst of nowhere. And when I stopped, went back to the temple and met with the people in the temple, they said to me that most of them are from India, that the only thing they do there is work with the community, local communities. And whilst I was there, school children from nearby schools all converge on this temple to have a meal before they go home. And they were giving nourishment to those children in that community. Now, it's very rare that when you travel through a country that you suddenly see something like this. And to enjoy, to understand, to enjoy this brotherhood of people that make the sacrifice just to see that the African child goes home not hungry and be able to come back the next day for a meal again. Yes, Doctor, these are the things that most of the Indian businessmen and people of Indian origin have been doing in African countries whilst doing business there.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your answer. And these are some of the things which we have to consider in terms of when we have the museum set up in India. I don't see Satyendra. Is he on the line? He was there in the beginning. Satyendra from Mauritius?
Do not see him, sir.
Okay. In that case, I think I will go with, we will bring back Vinod again later, but we have some distinguished guests with us. First of all, I wanted to bring in Mr. Prakash Hinduja and his granddaughter Nitya Hinduja, both on the screen. Vatsala, Nitya, can you open your screen so that we can bring you on the thing? I wanted to mention that when GOPIO was started, Hinduja Foundation was one of our first major sponsor. I'm talking 1989. Mr. Srichand Hinduja was our great supporter. And I would like to introduce, thank you, Mr. Hinduja, for joining us, we wanted you to hear this whole thing, what is happening. We have Mr. Prakash Hinduja. He is chairman of the Hinduja Group in Europe, and we have Ms. Nitya Hinduja, who is a graduate of Columbia University, Harvard Business School, and involved in venture capital. And I want to tell anybody quite intelligent, technology savvy, if you have a good idea, just approach Nitya. Go ahead. Nitya is going to give a talk. Prakash, do you want to say something before Nitya says something? Prakash, I know your official message is coming from Nitya. You have to unmute, Prakash. Can you unmute? There is a button there you have to press.
There is a lower left-hand corner of your screen. There is a button.
It shows a microphone. If you press that, that would come. It would unmute.
Can Vatsala do it?
No, Vatsala cannot do it. You have to do it there. By the time, Nitya, you want to speak at that time? Go ahead.
Sure.
By that time, go ahead, Nitya.
So hello, everyone. I'm Nitya. I'm the granddaughter of Prakash Hinduja, and I will be speaking on his behalf. Dear Dr. Thomas Abraham, Mr. Prakash Shah, Mr. Vinod Daniel, members of the GOPIO leadership, distinguished participants from across the globe, and friends of the Indian diaspora. Namaste and warm greetings. It is both an honor and a deeply personal privilege to join you today for the launch of this visionary initiative, the Indian Diaspora Museum. At the outset, allow me to extend my heartfelt appreciation to GOPIO for its unwavering commitment since 1989 to building bridges across continents and bringing together people of Indian origin under one global umbrella. The fact that GOPIO has grown to over 100 chapters in 35 countries is a testament to its powerful relevance and unifying mission. My family, and especially my late grandfather, Srichand Hinduja Ji, held GOPIO's vision close to his heart. He was amongst the earliest supporters, and the Hinduja Foundation's sponsorship of the first convention in New York in 1989 remains a milestone in our shared journey. I know he would have been deeply moved and proud to witness the birth of this project, an Indian Diaspora Museum, which seeks to memorialize the spirit, struggles, and successes of our global community. India has given birth to one of the most vibrant, diverse, and dynamic diasporas in the world. Across generations, our people have carried not just memories of the homeland, but its values of resilience, enterprise, family, and spirituality into new geographies. They have made extraordinary contributions in every field imaginable, from science and politics to arts and philanthropy, often while facing adversity with quiet dignity and determination. The proposed Indian Diaspora Museum is not just a space for artifacts or narrative. It is a living archive of our collective identity. It will be a place where history, heritage, and hope converge, a place where future generations, both in India and abroad, can learn, reflect, and be inspired by the journeys of those who came before them. I wholeheartedly congratulate the Museum Task Force and its chair, Mr. Vinod Daniel, as well as the entire GOPIO leadership for their vision and dedication in bringing this project to fruition. It is an initiative that will resonate across continents and across generations. Let us all work together to support and strengthen this noble endeavor. For in honoring the past, we will illuminate the path to the future. Thank you once again for this opportunity, and I assure you of my full support in this remarkable journey. Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you, Prakashji. I think you could still not unmute, but we need your help because when we started GOPIO, Sri Chanji was our main supporter, and we look forward to work with you closely in this thing. We really, and Nitya, very articulate. We look forward to work with you in New York when you are here. We have a good active chapters of GOPIO in Manhattan and other New York city areas. So we look forward to have you. But we will, if Kamalji come and do the unmute, we would like to hear from you, Ashokji. So we'll come back to you. Now I go to, we have another distinguished guest here, Mr. Ashok Amritraj. He was one of our early supporters. Ashokji, can you come in?
I think I'm here.
Yeah, wonderful.
Ashokji,
just wanted to mention he's the chairman and CEO of Hyde Park Entertainment, and he was in New York about a month back. We talked to him, and he came forward on the to support us. Whatever we do. Ashokji, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Abraham. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm speaking to you from Los Angeles, so it's morning here. It's a pleasure to join all of you this morning. First of all, congratulations to GOPIO for all the amazing work they are doing. It's really been a great sense of pride to me that the Indian community around the world, the Indian diaspora around the world, has had such a great degree of success over the last 50 years. From Silicon Valley to Sydney, from New York to New Delhi, from Hollywood to Hong Kong, the community has done extraordinarily well, and it is certainly a sense of pride, the importance and visibility that the community has now attained. Growing up in India and going to school and college in India, the very valuable lessons that my parents taught me and that the culture and traditions of India taught me have gotten me through a great deal of adversity over the last 50 years in my two careers, playing tennis for over a decade in Wimbledon and other places around the world, as well as my career in Hollywood for about 4 decades, making over 120 movies. Needless to say, when Jerry Buss brought me to California to play tennis, and then I got into the movie industry and found I was surrounded by a sea of white, and I had to break through a lot of those barriers, most of who were having a great deal of difficulty pronouncing my name, as many of you may have also had in your illustrious careers. However, you know, many of the movies I've made have been influenced by my growing up in India. I often hear from my friends, whether it's in Bollywood or other parts of India, how my first hit film, which was called Double Impact with Jean-Claude Van Damme, was about brothers and family and coming together and taking on the bad guys. And they say, oh, that's a very Indian theme. And I always say, yeah, well, that's sort of where I'm from. And in my nostalgic times in the 90s, I made a movie in Tamil called Jeans with a young director called Shankar and a young first-time Indian actress called Aishwarya Rai. My junior from Don Bosco, A.R. Rahman, did the music, and also dealt with family and tradition and culture, and was quite enjoyable to make, and was happy that it was a global hit. It's been a great run of working with all of the studios here and amazing actors and directors, but I think it is such a wonderful idea that GOPIO has had, and it's incredible to hear the support of the Indian diaspora around the world. Each of you have contributed so greatly to the success of the diaspora, and it is certainly time to create a museum that celebrates and preserves not just the culture and the tradition, but the accomplishments that the great community has had. 35 million diaspora around the world, 5 million in America alone. It is pretty extraordinary. And so my congratulations to everyone, and I wish you a great deal of success.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashokji. You have been a great supporter of the community. Even your brother, Vijay, has been a great supporter of many community causes. I had the opportunity to work with him closely in 1988 when we started an affinity credit card through our National Federation of Indian Associates. Really, thank you. Your all family have been very, very, very supportive. Now, at this point, Ashokji's, Prakashji's, I think you can speak right now. We would like to hear your thought. You're a very highly successful businessman. You have been a great supporter of community causes. Your Hinduja Foundation has done extremely well, although you gave your official message. We'd like to hear your views, how we go ahead, because you know how to get things done. Prakashji?
You see, Dr. Thomas Ibrahim, first of all, let me congratulate you. You are the architect of this whole foundation of GOPIO. There could have been nobody better than you, who really was a backbone of the whole structuring, and you are continuing this. But my comments will be that you should have the community, which is the tech community of US. And I think we should bring in more and more tech people from San Francisco and to be in the part of the GOPIO to play a role for the future of GOPIO. And the future generation, as I brought my granddaughter, and we should bring in more and more new generations to come in and bring in the GOPIO more energy and more life for the future. That's my, and of course our Hinduja Foundation will be very happy to always be supportive to help you, and also try to see that how we can bring into the film industry as well, as Ashok Amritaj and Mr. Bhuvan Lal has been always being in the Cannes Festival. And we have been also one of the great contributors in the film industry in India as well from the inception. So my suggestion will be that there is a tech event takes place every year in south of France in Cannes, where all of them, they meet at Lion Tech, it's called. You see, it's every year. So GOPIO's role should be with the new generations to bring the new chapter along with the Indian Museum, which will bring new inspiration to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prakashji. A wonderful suggestions and wonderful advice. We hope to reach out some of our multi-billionaires in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley, and of course, Ashok Amritraj is second due to reach them out. So we hope to do that too. And you could also help us and connect us to some other people whom you know. And especially once we start with the process of getting a museum project done in India, we will need your help. So we look forward to your help. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
At this point, I was wondering, there was a member of the parliament, he's a founder of ITV Media, Karthikeya Sharma. Is he here? He was going to join, he's a member of Rajya Sabha. If Karthikeya is in, please do unmute yourself and show on your screen. If not, I will ask Vinod to come and give some of your remarks about what you have heard from other speakers. Vinod, do you want to come back again for about a few minutes? Vinod? Go ahead. Vinod.
I've unmuted. I think just to comment, I think it's been an amazing amount of knowledge that came from so many different people. I think there's so much knowledge here, and I'm sure there's probably plenty of knowledge elsewhere that we can actually incorporate into whatever we are putting together. And that by itself would be a very valuable exercise, getting all this knowledge together. Now, I did write down some of the suggestions, because what I had put together before was more or less a little bit of umbrella concepts which can absorb many of these ideas. For example, some of the struggles of the indentured laborers could go into Gallery 1, the stories, film, some, whole thing on what the immigrant journey as well as the current diaspora are going through can go to the Wall of Voices. But whatever we can't fit in, we can also create larger structures within the gallery. It'll take a little bit of time to put it all together, but there's also so much more information and knowledge elsewhere also we have to incorporate, because all we have done so far is to put broad ideas and concepts together. So typically something like this, this was very much to give a little bit of a snapshot. We may have to take it to the next level where we put together a bit of a researched, detailed project plan together for the whole thing that can capture everything. And I think that's what we should progress to do it. That would probably have quite a bit of strength with the contents. There needs to be, a real large scale amount of research, consultation, everything happening with, different audiences around the world. Get the contents together, put that into a form where we can design the galleries and show that in a form that ultimately, I think the key is going to be to do some fundraising to make this a reality. And I think to get there, we need to put this detailed project report together that can actually be taken out and shown to people how the whole thing would look like. So right now it's still broad concepts. And I think, it'll be good to work closely with you, Dr. Abraham and others in seeing how we can do that.
Thank you. We're going to take some questions from the audience. For that, I request Vatla and Sid to get ready. But in the meanwhile, is Dr. Lena Armodam is here. She is a member of our committee. Lena, we were supposed to have a presentation from the Mauritius, but I don't see that person. You can say something about the French diaspora.
Unfortunately, Lena has actually left.
Yes.
He left. Okay. All right. So let's take a few questions from if you can bring in some questions. Sid or Vatsala, can you?
So first question that I see in this list, right? It started at the top. Must have been answered, but I can bring it up.
Marcella, you also be prepared to bring in some questions.
Yeah. So Lena was the one who she brought up the question on Reunion Island Sugar Society plantation. That should be covered in some form.
Okay.
So I think Vinodji, you've already replied to that in the chat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The other one was brought in by the AI side. We have Santeji, he's still here. He wrote about how AI can digitize and make it interactive, and he's part of an AI program where he would like to help, and happy to bring them on board on this project. So there are more suggestions than questions actually, sir, on the chat, but I've not had any specific question. It's more about suggestions and what can be added. The last one was added by Vyasji about his father who was part of the Heart Act. That's going to have 60 years this year. The Heart Act is the one that was brought in. So I don't have any specific questions.
Okay, all right. We can bring all the. Can you bring all the speakers on the screen?
Yeah, I'll bring them. Yes.
Yeah, so that we can have sort of a bring all the speakers into the screen.
Yeah, doing that.
Yeah. Anybody want anything for the final minute of time so that we will
we have
program right now?
Eval Kanda, our Vice President.
Just a quick thing, Dr. Abraham.
Pawar, our chair
It's
of the
a
Youth
Diaspora
Committee.
Museum in Tel Aviv, Israel, and that's a very major initiative by the Israeli government.
You're talking about by Israeli government?
Yes, that connects the entire diaspora of the Jewish community globally to Israel. So that's a good model kind of thing we should consider working with.
Yeah, I think when you get a time, you should go and visit that place.
Yeah, good suggestion.
Nitya, can you switch on your camera? Want to add you for this group picture of speakers? Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, sir. I have all the speakers who are currently here, who have not left, are all on the screen right now.
Yeah. How about Ashokji?
Ashokji left, sir.
Okay. All right. So I have. All right. Anybody else? Professor Gupta, any comment? The final comment? We are going to finish it right now.
I put my comments on the chat just so that they can be picked up by whoever is interested. And the Dr. Bhuvan Lalji's comment about the Diaspora Museum in Tel Aviv is very interesting, particularly because it includes Indian Jews who emigrated there. The history of Indian Jews in India is very little known, but actually they came to India at least in the 1st century BC, and maybe they came as early as the 7th century BC. And people don't know that generally. So there's a lot of Indian history and a lot of Indian history, which is absolutely fascinating. And I think the Diaspora Museum would be such a wonderful museum once it is set up. So educational, so informative, and so surprising, I think, for a lot of people. So many things about Indian history are just not known.
Thank you. Omiji, anything, any comment? Final comment? You are on mute. Otherwise, would Shalima and Nitya also please unmute? We want to hear a personal comment from Nitya too. Go ahead, Shalima, any final comment?
Yes, if I may, I just want to raise something about the significance of repatriating artifacts and archival documents. Now, there's a lingering imbalance between the knowledge and the power with the colonial authorities. There are a lot of artifacts and documents which are still held in the British Museum, the British Archives, the British Library, which are unknown to us. And I think it is well worth our while to get those to include in this museum. It serves a dual purpose. It will restore some dignity to our people, the Gomitias, that is, us descendants. It will serve as a sense of belonging, and it presents historical truths which we do not know. Additionally, in returning these documents, Britain and India will have an opportunity to move from a past of extraction to a future of collaboration, hopefully, where history is not just possessed by Britain, but preserved and honored together. Thank you.
Thank you. Omiji, you have to unmute if you can. Nitya, we want to hear your thoughts. I know you gave the Mr. Prakash Hinduja's message, but as a young person, you are the youngest person in this whole group. Would you like to say something?
Sure. I'm very impressed by this entire effort, and the passion that I feel on this call is palpable. So just want to say thank you so much to everyone who joined for bringing this energy to this project, and I hope it only continues forward.
Thank you. Omiji, your last
Thank you.
word.
Thank you, Dr. Abrahams, for putting this initiative together. And I think that this kind of discussions will bring GOPIO back as it was in 1989, back on the map. And I think it will encourage the younger generation to start participating in GOPIO. As you see on the screen, most of us are in our 60s, but we need to bring the younger generations on now and impart some knowledge to them. But thank you very much, Dr. Abrahams.
Thank you. Really appreciate all of you coming in. At this point, may I request Sid Jain to come in to say vote of thanks, and then we will officially open it for everybody for a little more time. Sid?
Yes, sir. Thank you all for coming to this very, very important webinar, Tracing Our Roots, as they had traversed outside of our nation years and years and years ago, to create a memory for people who are not aware of where our roots are, who have traversed years ago. This is a very important effort. Started by Vinod Danielji and ably supported by everybody in the group. Today we are seeing the first cut of what will become a reality, as the timeline says, in about 18 months. So I want to start thanking with Vinodji and the entire team that worked on this project in the background to make this presentation here today. Prabhu Guptara ji, Hinduja ji, Bhuvanlal ji, Prakash ji, Nitya, definitely you're one of the futures for us here. Shalima ji and your colleague Kumar ji, Omi Singh ji, am I forgetting? Yes, Ashok Amritraj ji, who came in and was not here. Satyen ji, who was going to talk but was not here. Then our GOPIO leadership, starting with Dr. Abraham, our President Prakash Shah, our Global Ambassador Nami Kaur, who was very active on the chat in recognizing everyone's contributions. We had our Vice President Keval Khanda, our various other leaders. We had Vasu Pawarji, Raj Punjabi, Aparna Hande, and many others in GOPIO who have joined but may not have their cameras on, as well as our resident film historian and a diaspora movie maker, Trilok Malik, then Ashok Motwani ji. A lot of folks who are here are all here because they support GOPIO in this initiative, and we would like to see your continued support as we go along this journey. Thank you all for being here. Have a lovely, lovely weekend, and stay tuned as we give you more updates on this progress.